Good morning, Ms. Hofmeyer. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, Chair.
Yes, are we ready?
We are indeed. Chair, this morning there is first a matter of an application for the first witness to give his evidence in camera. I use that term loosely again, as I did previously this week, because there are only specific respects in which the witness seeks not to have his identity disclosed. He is, however, legally represented, and I'd like to offer an opportunity for my learned friend to introduce himself and move that application, if I may.
Yes, thank you.
Morning, Chairperson.
Good morning.
My name is Advocate David Mtsweni. I practice with the
Just raise your voice.
My name is Advocate David Mtsweni. I practice with the Pretoria Society of Advocates.
Yes.
On brief by the Office of the State Attorney on behalf of a witness to be known as Mr. Y for the record purposes.
Yes.
Chairperson, in a nutshell, the reasons for why the Mr. Y's evidence ought to
Well,
be...
before that, I've got, is this a duplication or what? Oh yeah, I've got two files that appear to be the same on the outside. Let me see.
Chair, I'm told that the other one has got is redacted. The other one is the unredacted version. And should have almost...
It's just that I've got what I thought would have been a reference being the same SEQ 02/2020 for both of them. But the one you are moving is, I think this other one, the identity of, the person who has deposed to the founding affidavit there has got a name.
Yes.
Then there is this one which has got an affidavit with the name and certain particulars blocked out.
Yes, that is the redacted version.
Yes. Now, so the application is being brought by the State Security Agency.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That is correct, Chairperson. The reasons...
Well, you see, it's tricky because the application is being brought by the State Security Agency and not by the person himself or herself. But the founding affidavit is by the person himself. In the founding affidavit, it doesn't say that the applicant is the State Security Agency. It's just that in the heading it says the State Security Agency of the Republic of South Africa applicant.
We, Chairperson, we used the agency by virtue of the agency being his employer. But the best person who can explain to you, Chairperson, the reasons why the evidence should be in camera would be the deponent himself.
No, I'm not there yet. I'm not on the merits of the application. I'm on the applicant. I'm saying that I need to know who the applicant is first. Now, the one that I dealt with 2 days ago the applicant was Mr. X. So Mr. X brought the application. Now here, the heading suggests that the applicant is the State Security Agency. Now, you can't just decide that because you are employed by the State Security Agency, you are going to bring proceedings in the name of the State Security Agency. There's got to be more than that. Are you authorized to bring the application on behalf of the State Security Agency?
He tells you that, Chairperson, at paragraph 1.3 of the affidavit.
Well, what he says there in 1.3 is also reads very strangely. I have the necessary locus standi and authority to depose to this affidavit and to launch the present application. Now, it doesn't do what is normally done. I bring this application on behalf of the State Security Agency, and I'm duly authorized by reason of blah, 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 blah. So when you read part of 1.3, it's like he's bringing it himself, because otherwise, if the application is being brought by the State Security Agency, he doesn't have to talk about his locus standi. No, it talks about his locus standi if he's bringing it himself.
We do appreciate that, Chairperson, but we dealt with it. I think one of the things was the time constraints within which we had to bring the application. But at the time when we decided to bring the application in the agency's name was because we thought that it would be best because the agency is his employer and he is requested to appear before you, Chairperson, by virtue of him being employed by the agency, not him himself.
Yes, unfortunately, we can't talk about what his position is in the agency because that would reveal his identity. So that also makes it tricky because without knowing that, it could be some administrative officer or somebody not so high up in the agency who then decides I'm bringing the application, or rather my employer is going to be the applicant, whereas it's the employer who must decide whether they are going to be the applicant in these proceedings. And he says he has the authority. I don't think he says he attaches anything.
No, we do not.
Very often people say I'm authorized. Sometimes you suspect they don't even know what that means. So I'm not suggesting he doesn't know, but I'm just saying this is one of those affirmations that people just put in so easily in affidavits. I'm authorized to do this and that and that, So I'm just raising these as concerns at this stage. I'm not saying that they are necessarily standing in the way, but I'm concerned about them. I don't know whether the plan is for him to give evidence immediately after we've dealt with the application, or he could come later, because it may be that you might need to just rectify some things in the application. Is the plan that he would be the next witness?
Chair, that was the original plan, that
Yes.
his evidence would be received first. I just need to confer with Mr. Mbikiwe about whether there's anything lost in a reversal of the order. Some of the planning of today envisaged his evidence first and then the move to the second witness.
Yes, yes.
Having said that, though, there is a further supplementary affidavit that I know my learned friend was going to hand up to you today, dealing with at least the identification of Mr. Y.
Yeah.
I don't know, he will make submissions on it. It's not clear to me that it resolves the crisp issue that you've raised. But maybe he must address that and we see where we go. If I could just take a moment to just consider whether there could be a reversion of the order.
Okay.
Thank you. Chair, I've chatted to my learned friend. We are of the view that we could reverse the order, that it's not essential that we have Mr. X before Ms. Dlamini, Mr. Y. My goodness, I'm so glad my learned friend is doing Mr. Y's evidence because it's less likely that he will make this error. So we could certainly reverse the order.
Okay, no, that's fine. Thank you. Well, you see, you might have to choose whether you stick to bringing the application, you stick to the state secret agents being the applicant, or whether you decide to change and make the witness the applicant.
Chair,
if you decide to change, then you could have Mr. Y as the applicant in the heading, Mr. Y, and then he brings the application as Mr. Y, and he indicates that Y is not his real name, but it's for purposes of these proceedings. It's important that his identity be not disclosed, and he asks for leave that he be referred to in these proceedings as Mr. Y.
Yes. Now, Chairperson, I've discussed this with my instructing attorney. We have no objection, we have no problem in substituting Mr. Y as the applicant, and given now the change in sequence of the witnesses, may we then stand down for that purpose so that we can rectify the error in the meantime while Ms. Dlamini gives her evidence.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We'll stand the application down so that you can attend to that, and then at a later stage, then I can deal with the application.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay, so this application will stand down. Okay. We don't need to do any to adjourn.
Chair, I don't think so.
Okay.
The witness is present with us in the room.
Yes, okay.
And provided I just get the right files in front of me, we will be ready to go.
Okay.
Chair, if I may call Ms. Dlamini to take up a position in the witness area.
Yes, thank you. You can administer the oath or affirmation.
Please state your full names for the record.
Nokunqoba Gloria Dlamini.
Do you have any objection to taking the prescribed oath?
No, I don't have any objections.
Do you consider the oath to be binding on your conscience?
Yes, I do.
Do you swear that the evidence will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? If so, please raise your right hand and say, "So help me God."
So help me God.
Thank you. You may be seated. Yes, Ms. Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Dlamini, you have in front of you a soft file, and you'll see that it's paginated in the top right-hand corner with red pagination numbers. Those will be the numbers I'll be referring to today in the course of your evidence. Chair, for record purposes, if we could enter as Exhibit DD24, Ms. Dlamini's affidavit and accompanying annexures.
Ms. Nokunqoba Gloria Dlamini's affidavit and annexures to that affidavit will be admitted as Exhibit DD24 and will be marked accordingly.
And Chair, just for the transcription purposes,
Yes.
Ms. Dlamini's name is spelt as follows. Her first name, Nokunqoba, is Nokunqoba. Second name, Gloria, Gloria, and surname Dlamini, Dlamini.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Dlamini, I'd like to begin on page 1 of your affidavit, if we may, because you indicate in the first line where you are employed. Where is that?
I'm employed by Stake Security Agency based in Pretoria head office.
Thank you. Ms. Dlamini, can I just suggest that you bring the microphone even just a bit closer? It's important that we get your testimony as clear as possible for the purposes of the transcription.
Yes, I think your voice is quite soft, so do make an effort to raise it.
Raise it? Okay,
Okay.
I'll do that.
And in what position are you employed there?
I'm an analyst and evaluator.
And what does that mean in the context of the agency?
It means I interpret and analyze report from the information obtained from the vetting fieldwork.
So are your responsibilities particularly directed to vetting exercises conducted by the agency?
Very much, thank you.
And do you have any other role outside of vetting?
Yes, I have been assigned a role of a project manager when the vetting of executives of SAA was undertaken.
And what does that role require of you, the project manager role?
You mean in terms of the skills? or
Yes.
the
Well,
qualifications?
what role you play as project manager?
Okay. As the project manager, I was responsible to outline the project overview, define the objectives of that project, make sure that we are within the scope, and then outline the budget for the project, the milestones, make sure the responsibilities of personnel within the project team are clearly defined, and also to ensure the communication lines between us and the client are clear, and then also make sure there's resources and facilities for the team.
Have you played that role of project manager for vetting previously, prior to the SAA vetting or subsequently?
I have been amongst the team who were on projects within the organization prior to my appointment.
And that's the appointment as project manager of the specific vetting operation at SAA, is that
Yes,
correct?
Yes, yes.
And since then, have you been the project manager of any other vetting operations?
This was my first appointment.
And subsequent to that, have you been in that position since then?
Yes, I was responsible to manage the project of government printing works as well.
Thank you. And in terms of your qualifications, what qualifications do you hold?
I've got a master's degree in public administration from the University of Pretoria, senior management program from University of Pretoria. I also hold a project management, practical project management course from UNISA Business School, new managers program from VETS, and security advising course.
Thank you. And when did you join the State Security Agency?
I've been with the agency for the past 16 years.
And have you always been involved in the vetting operation side?
Yes, very much.
Thank you. Ms. Dlamini, you indicate at the outset in the first few pages of your affidavit the request that was received from the Commission, and you detail the information that you were required to provide. That's by way of background, and then you actually commence at page 6 of your affidavit to provide that information. So I'd like to move us there, if we may. Page 6 of Exhibit DD24.
On the affidavit,
Yes.
page 6, yes.
So you'll see at the bottom there you have a heading called The Vetting of SAA Executives and Support Staff. Ms. Dlamini, just before we move into that, just to orientate ourselves in the evidence, Chair, you will recall that when we had the previous aviation session, there was some evidence received about security vetting that had been conducted within SAA. You heard evidence in two respects in relation to that. There was evidence of Ms. Nancy, who, towards the end of her testimony, indicated that there had been a particular interaction that she'd had with Ms. Mieni after some of the results of this vetting exercise had been made known to Ms. Mieni. I'll come to that in the course of Ms. Dlamini's evidence. But the other respect in which the Commission has already heard about this vetting was in the evidence of Ms. Tuli Mshe, because she gave evidence about the concerns that had been expressed by management of SAA at the time that this vetting operation took place. And so the investigations of the Commission subsequent to that evidence has been to engage the State Security Agency and obtain more information about how that vetting operation came about and was conducted. And so it's my intention to deal with that aspect today with Ms. Dlamini. Ms. Dlamini, you start at the bottom of page 6 and you explain first of all how it came about that this vetting operation was conducted at SAA. Can you please tell us about that?
Yes, there were engagements between the two ministers, former Minister of Finance, Honorable Nene, and our former Minister, Honorable Mahlobo. I was not privy of those conversations or meetings, but there are attached correspondence to that as they engage on the need and the decision that the executives of SAA must be vetted.
I'd like to go to that correspondence because, as you indicate, you've attached it to your affidavit, and you'll find the first letter at page 17 of DD24.
It's here.
What page?
17, Chair, 17.
17, okay.
Do you have that page? 17.
Yes.
And what is this document?
I think this is the letter from the Minister of State Security then, Honorable Mahlobo, to Minister Nene at the time.
Thank you. And just for the transcribers, Mahlobo is spelled Mahlobo. That's Mr. David Mahlobo, who was then the Minister of State Security. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Now, this letter, did you see it at the time that it was prepared?
No. I didn't see it at the time.
Did you see it before you commenced the vetting operation?
No, I saw the letter that was attached to the list of officials and executives that were to undergo the vetting.
Okay, we'll come to that letter in a moment. Let's just deal with the letter at 18. What is the date of the letter according to the second page?
Where are you now?
I'm on page 18 of
Yes.
Exhibit DD24, which is the second page of the letter we're looking at. And I was asking what date is indicated on that page.
13 October 2015.
And you indicated that it was a letter written by Minister Mahlobo, former Minister Mahlobo, to former Minister Nene. Is that correct?
Yes.
And I understand you to say you did not see this at any stage before you conducted the vetting operation. Is that right?
I got to see the letter that was attached to the list.
Yes, so let's just be clear. This letter, did you see it at the time?
No.
No. When did you first see this letter?
Yes, I got aware of the letter, but I can't have the exact date.
But was it at some point during the vetting operation?
Yes.
Did you read the letter when you came to be aware of it?
Yes.
Please could you indicate what is stated in the letter at paragraph 2?
It has come to the attention of the State Security Agency that there is an urgent need for vetting and revetting of state-owned enterprises, given sensitive information received on an ongoing basis. And I think that's the part that was also indicated on the letter where the list of executives and support staff that I received.
We'll go to that letter in a moment. And so that is paragraph 2 of Minister Mahlobo's letter to Minister Nene. What does Minister Mahlobo record in paragraph 3?
He's indicating the need to vet the officials at the SOE because of the huge impact that let me start again. SOEs as government entities have a huge impact on the economy of the country and therefore extremely important for state security to conduct vetting as per the mandate of SSA.
Okay, let's read what he precisely says that mandate is. If you could read from the third line. As I have it, it starts as per. Will you read from as per section 1?
As per section 1 of the National Strategic Intelligence Act, Act 39 of 1994, as amended by Act 67 of 2002, states that the National Intelligence Agency has the mandate to vet all other national, provincial, and local government departments, parastatals, and their service providers.
Do you know the provisions of the National Strategic Intelligence Act that deal with vetting?
Come again?
Do you know the provisions of the National Strategic Intelligence Act that deal with vetting?
I'm aware that in terms of the strategic objectives of counterintelligence, the main objective is to ensure that corruption in state-owned entities is reduced.
Okay. Are you familiar with the provisions of this act?
Yes, I do.
You are, okay.
Yes. It states that vetting should be conducted to persons who are employed by the state or who are to render services to the state and have access to classified information or the national key points.
Okay.
Yes.
Does section 1 of the Act, as Minister Mahlobo records here, say what is in quotations in paragraph 3?
Just repeat the question.
Thank you, Chair. You'll see, Ms. Dlamini, at paragraph 3, Minister Nokunqoba indicates that Section 1 of the
Yes.
National Strategic Intelligence Act states that, and then there is a quotation. On the face of the paragraph, it appears to be a quotation from Section 1 of the National Strategic Intelligence Act. Do you understand the paragraph in the same way as I do? Please say yes. The
Yes,
nod
yes,
is not
yes,
recorded.
yes.
Thank you. And I'm asking you, is that what Section 1 of that Act says?
On this paragraph,
Yes.
it's not clearly stated that these employees are employed by the state, by SOEs.
Okay, Ms. Dlamini. Just listen to the question carefully and answer just the question. The question is, does Section 1 of this Act say what Mr. Nokunqoba quoted here? Do you know? I know that for some time, Section 1 used to be the definition section
Yes,
of an Act.
It still is, unfortunately.
But some of the definitions now are at the end of the Acts. So are you able to say whether he has got it right?
No.
He
no,
didn't get it right?
No.
Okay, all right.
Did anyone pick that up? That he was quoting a section of the Act that doesn't read like that?
I didn't pick it up, I have to be honest.
And anyone else pick
I'm
it
not
up?
aware. I'm not aware.
And
Well, it would be interesting to know whether there is any section in the Act that says that.
there isn't.
There isn't.
No, alas. It
Oh,
is.
that would be very interesting.
Yes, it is interesting. It's part of what I intend to probe with Ms. Dlamini today.
Okay.
So what is quoted, you confirm, is not what Section 1 says of the Act. And let me ask you, are you aware of any section of the Act that reads with the words in the quotations referred to in paragraph 3?
No, I'm not aware. I'm aware that it's Section 2A.
Indeed it is.
It
yes.
is Section 2A that covers the mandate to vet the employees of the state-owned entities.
But it doesn't say what he has quoted here.
No, it doesn't say.
Okay.
Yeah.
You see, because what is quoted here, I want to suggest to you, is far broader than what Section 2A of the Act actually says. What is quoted here is that a section of the National Strategic Intelligence Act states that, quote, the National Intelligence Agency, NIA, has the mandate to vet all other national, provincial, and local government departments, parastatals, or their service providers. Do you see that?
Yes, I do. Yes, I see.
And
that.
you know what Section 2, capital A provides, don't
Yes,
you?
it's quite specific to
Yes.
say it's the individuals who are employed by the state or those that are to render service to the state and have access to national key points or classified information.
Let's go to the section to which you refer. Chair, for that purpose, you'll need the legislation bundle. I trust Ms. Dlamini has a copy of the legislation bundle. If not, could I just request that one be made available to her?
I do have a part on the legislation.
That's fine, but I'd like us to be on the same page in the bundle that I'll be referring to. So we'll just make available to you the legislation bundle. And you'll turn up page 361.
Well, somebody must just go and check whether it's
It
among
may
the
be
files.
next to you there, Ms. Dlamini.
Tell her what is written on the spine.
On the side, it should say legislation. Can you just check the
That's
spine?
on the spine.
On the spine, yes.
On the spine, outside, on the spine. Does it say legislation on the
No,
opposite
no,
side?
no.
No, at the back, yeah.
Yes, yes.
Oh,
yes.
okay.
Aviation legislation reference bundle.
That's precisely what we need to be working with. Thank you so much. And if you'll turn up page 361.
361.
Do you have
Yes,
that?
yes, I'm there.
And that is the first page of the National Strategic Intelligence Act 39 of 1994. That's the one we've been talking about. Is that correct, Ms. Dlamini? You'll need to say yes.
I don't know.
That's the one. Yes, that's the one.
You must give the answer
Yes.
so that it can be captured.
Captured. Okay, yes,
Well,
that's
I
the
see, Ms. Hofmeyer, that Section 1 is the definition
It is,
section.
yes. So 1 is the definition, so that couldn't have been a correct reference in paragraph 3. But now we're moving to, as Ms. Dlamini has pointed out, there is a section of the Act dealing with vetting. It's not Section 1, it's Section 2, capital A. And what we're looking at now is that Section 2, capital A doesn't say what is quoted in Minister Mahlobo's paragraph 3. So let's go to 2 capital A. You'll find that at page 365. Do you see section 2 capital A there, Ms. Dlamini?
Yes, I see section 2A, capital A, Advocate Hofmeyer.
Thank you. And could you read for us what subsection 1 of that section provides?
When performing any function, refer to an
No, I think we're at the wrong. You need to
Oh,
go
yes,
a bit
yes,
further
yes,
down
yes,
the
yes,
page
yes,
to,
yes, sorry.
in bold, 2
Yes.
capital A, and then the heading is vetting investigations.
Yes.
Could you read the rest of that subsection?
You mean just the A? Just the A? From the top.
1A.
Okay. The relevant member of the national intelligence structure may conduct a vetting investigation in the prescribed manner to determine the security competence of a person if such a person is employed by or is an applicant to an organ of state, or is rendering a service, or has given notice of intention to render a service to an organ of state, which service may give him or her access to classified information and intelligence in possession of the organ of state, or give him or her access to areas designated national key points in terms of the National Key Point Act 1990, Act number 102 of 1980.
Thank you. Do you agree that that section 2A is different to the words that appear in paragraph 3 of Minister Mahlobo's letter?
Yes, yes.
We will look at the details of what section 2 capital A envisage in a moment, but I'd like to just finish with the letter of Minister Mahlobo, if we may. So if you'll go back to DD 24, and that's the exhibit containing your affidavit, and turn to page 18, because that's the second page of Minister Mahlobo's letter. Can we go to paragraph 4 there? Could you read into the record what paragraph 4 says?
This should be understood from the background of challenges affecting most of the state-owned entities.
I think it says companies. Is that correct?
Companies,
Thank
yes.
you. And paragraph 6?
The chairperson, in bracket SAA, will be required to provide a list of all executive management and support staff.
Right. Ms. Dlamini, can I get your understanding of what this letter was seeking to convey to Minister Nene? Because as I understand your evidence, it's because of this correspondence between the two ministers that you were charged with undertaking the vetting operation. Is that right?
As I've indicated before, I didn't see this letter prior to my responsibilities.
I thought you said you hadn't seen it prior to it starting, but you saw it in the
Yes.
course of the responsibilities. Is that right?
Responsibilities, yes.
But your affidavit before this commission says the reason why there was going to be vetting undertaken at SAA at all is because Minister Mahlobo engaged with Minister Nene about it. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And as evidence of that, you've attached this letter to your affidavit, correct?
Yes, yes, and the letter that I saw first.
We'll deal with that in a moment, because this
Yes.
comes first in the chronology. So what was your understanding based on this letter at the time or in terms of briefings that you were given as to why vetting needed to be undertaken at SAA?
My understanding is that the executives of SAA are employed by a state-owned entity, and in terms of our mandate, they have to be vetted.
And who conveyed that to you? Or was that your understanding?
I engaged with my executive boss at the time.
And
So
who
we
was that?
discussed, General Dlodlo, yes.
And can I just be clear, what you understood was because these management persons and their support staff were employed at a state-owned company,
Yes,
they were required to be security vetted. Is that correct?
that is correct, because they were working for a state-owned entity in terms of the law and in terms of our mandate.
Is that the only requirement, that they just needed to be employed there and then they needed to be subjected to security vetting?
In terms of Section 2A, that is one of the requirements, and if they have access to classified information or they have access to a national key point. But I would go with the first one where it says employed by a
So
state-owned entity.
is the fact that they're employed enough to trigger the need for security vetting?
Yes, very much so, yes.
So it's not necessary that they, in addition to being employed, have access to classified information,
It could be,
but it's not required.
It is required, but being employed by a state institution on its own, it's enough.
Right.
Yes.
When Minister Mahlobo motivates for this vetting operation in his letter to Minister Nene, you'll see that at paragraph 2, he seems to place some emphasis on the information that these people who are going to be vetted have access to. Because you'll see in paragraph 2, he says, "It has come to the attention of the State Security Agency that there is an urgent need for vetting and re-vetting of state-owned enterprises, given sensitive information received on an ongoing basis." Do you see that?
Yes, I do see that.
Do you differ from him insofar as you regard it only being necessary that the person vetted is employed by the state-owned entity?
I don't regard it as the only requirement, but I'm saying by virtue of being employed, you have to be vetted by employed in a state-owned entity. Also, if you've got access to classified information. So I do agree with him to a certain extent.
But not, so if he were to say, no, you have to have access to classified information to be vetted, I understand you to say you would disagree because the mere fact of employment is sufficient. Is that right?
No, that's not right.
What is your evidence?
I'm saying you have to be employed as per Section 2A, as it states that if you are employed by an organ of state, you have to be vetted.
Thank
That's
you.
the first
You've
part.
given, indeed.
Yes. And then the second part states that if you've got access to classified information or access to national key point, you have to be vetted.
Okay. It's quite important that we just get this clear because I understood you earlier to say that on its own, the fact that you're employed by an organ of state, such as a state-owned company, is enough to require you to be security vetted. Is that correct?
It could be a combination of the two. You can be employed and not have access to classified information.
And you would still need to be vetted?
And you still need to be vetted.
Let me see if I can assist Ms. Dlamini.
Yes.
There is a difference between something that must be done. You say that thing is compulsory. and a situation where something does not have to be done, but may be done. You understand?
Yes, 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 yes.
It's compulsory that when you come to the commission, you be dressed.
Yes.
But it's not compulsory that you put on your best dress, okay? But if you like, you can put on your best dress, okay? So now, was your understanding that if somebody is employed by an organ of state, security vetting is compulsory?
Yes, yes.
Or was your understanding that if you are employed by an organ of state, it may be necessary under certain circumstances that you be subjected to security vetting, but it is not compulsory? Which of the two are you saying was your understanding?
Yes, Chairperson, I'm saying if you are employed by an organ of state, you should be vetted.
It's compulsory.
It's compulsory.
And does that mean all the millions that are employed by government must all be vetted, and they would all have been vetted?
Yes.
Irrespective of your position, the cleaning staff in various government departments, they also have, on your understanding, they must be subjected to security vetting.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
That has always been your understanding?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Thank you, Chair. I'm indebted. I've highlighted that Minister Mahlobo, and I accept, Ms. Dlamini, it's Minister Mahlobo's letter. It is not your letter.
Yeah.
But Minister Mahlobo seems in the letter to place some emphasis on the fact that these persons who are going to be vetted have access to sensitive information. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Now, I'd just like to probe that a little bit with you. What is the agency's understanding of that link between the employees and sensitive information? Must it be the case that the employees have access to such information to be vetted?
Can you come again, please?
Is it a requirement that an employee who's going to be vetted must have access to sensitive information, or is that not a requirement?
If we look at the law, it states that if you are employed by the state, you have to be vetted. And or if you are rendering a service to a state organization and you have access to classified information, you have to be vetted.
Right. So
Yes.
you add the requirement of access to classified information for those who are rendering services. Is that right?
Yes.
I understand that distinction. Is your understanding that you describe now commonly the understanding amongst the people in the vetting division of the State Security Agency?
Let me not talk for the rest of
Okay.
the people. Yeah.
No,
I
that's
think-
fine.
yeah.
Do you have briefings about this?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do.
I fully appreciate that many of you may not be lawyers, but at some point, has this understanding that you described today been discussed amongst colleagues and understood?
Very much.
Very
Very much, yes.
Thank you. I'd then like to go back, if we may, to your affidavit at page 6. And you can actually turn over the page to page 7, because we're now going to deal with what your affidavit says about the exchanges between Minister Mahlobo and Minister Nene and what followed. At paragraph 3.2, you deal with what happened after the exchange of correspondence. Can you tell us what that was?
3.2.
Indeed.
After the exchanges, then the list was forwarded to our ministry at the time, Honorable I was not there when the list was compiled, but when we received the list, it was written executives and support staff.
And who sent the list through?
I received it from my executive, and then it was from our ministry.
Right. Let's go to those letters, if we may. You'll find the first one at page 19 of Exhibit DD24.
Page?
19.
Yes.
So what is this letter?
This is the letter that former Minister Nene wrote to our former Minister, Honorable Mahlobo.
And what date is indicated at the bottom of the letter?
I think it's 26 November 2015. Yes.
And it appears to be, as you describe, a response to the letter we were just looking at,
Yes.
dated the 13th of October 2015. Is that
Yes,
correct?
that is correct, yes.
Do you see in the second paragraph that Minister Nene quotes the same section of the Act that Minister Mahlobo quoted?
The National Strategic Intelligence Act, 39 of 1994.
Yes.
Yes.
He quotes it in the same terms that Minister Mahlobo quoted it, didn't he?
He quotes it in the terms of saying there's executive have access to sensitive information.
I wanted to say, Ms. Hofmeyer, maybe they purport to
Yes.
quote it.
That's far more accurate, Chair, far more accurate. Let me use that exact description. In the second sentence of the second paragraph, Ms. Dlamini, what Minister Nene appears to do there is to purport to quote the Section 1 of the National Strategic Intelligence Act, and he purports to quote it in the very same language that Minister Mahlobo quoted it, doesn't he?
Yes.
And that we've already resolved is not what the Act says, does it?
That we've resolved.
Yes. And it goes on at paragraph 3 to talk about two separate letters dated the 2nd and the 5th of November 2015 from the SAA board chairperson, Ms. D. Mieni, which lists all executive management and support staff as per your request. Do you see that?
Yes.
So is this the letter that you were talking about to which the lists were attached?
This is the letter that I was talking about where the list was attached, yes.
So let's go to that list because it's preceded by a letter on the next page, which is at page 20.
Yes.
And what is that document?
This is the list now of the executives that were to undergo a vetting assessment.
Right, and this is the list, a letter dated the 2nd of November 2015. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Yes, yes, yes.
Now, you see in that letter, there's a list of executive management members that are going to be vetted. Is that correct?
It is the list of executive members that are going to be vetted.
And
That's
how many
correct.
names are indicated there?
On the front top part, it's 13 names.
Right.
And then you proceed with the whole list of names.
Why do you say the whole list of names precedes this?
I'm saying because it starts from this page and then there's the list that continues up when you look at 22, 23, 24, 25,
I see.
26, 27, 28. Yes. Yes.
So just so we understand the document on the same terms, what I understand Ms. Mieni to be saying at page 20, and correct me if your understanding at the time was different, was that this letter would include, I'm now at paragraph 1. She writes there, I refer to the letter from the Minister dated 2 November 2015, requesting for a list of all SAA executive management and support staff. The list of support staff will be forwarded to the Minister on Wednesday, 4 November 2015. She goes on, the list of executive management member is given below, and then we have a list of 13 names. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And then if we go over the page, there's a further letter. Who writes that letter?
It is the letter that was written to former Minister Nene from the former chairperson of SAA, Ms. Mieni.
And that is dated the 5th of November 2015, is that correct?
Yes, it's the 5th of November 2015, yes.
And in the second line of that letter, she indicates, well, first of all, she refers to the previous letter on the 2nd, and then she says, please find attached a list with details of all executive managers and support staff. And then if we go over the page, is this the list that you were referring to?
This is the list that I was referring to.
Did you take note of whether the 13 names that had been included on the first list as executive managers who would be vetted ended up being increased in this more lengthy list?
Increased in what sense?
More than 13 managers were now going to be vetted pursuant to the list commencing at page 22.
When I received this, it was the entire document. So I wouldn't separate the 13 names to the rest of the names. So I didn't separate it. So
was your understanding that this list that commences at paginated page 22 to paginated page 28 comprised all the people that you needed to conduct security vetting of?
Yes.
And did you go through any process of working out who on this list was in executive management position and who was in support staff position?
No, not at a time, but as soon as they were submitting the forms that they had filled, I was able to make that distinction.
And at that point, did you work out whether the executive managers were confined to the original list of 13 or not?
What do you mean?
The original list that Ms. Mieni provides on the 2nd of November had a list of only 13 managers.
Yes.
But the list that commences at page 22 ends up with, I think it's 118 people who are going to be vetted.
Yes,
Did you establish, once you'd worked out their positions, whether the original list of 13 managers had increased to include other managers as well?
When I looked at the list, I looked at it in total.
So I think the answer is no. You didn't?
No, yeah. I looked at it in total.
Right.
So the first 13 and the rest of the names, to me, it was just a list of the officials that had to be vetted at a time.
And whose decision was it to vet executive management and support staff?
I was not given reasons, and I wasn't there when the two ministers were engaging on that, so I wouldn't know whose decision it was.
All right. Did you consider at all the question whether the board members of SAA should not also be subject to security vetting?
Not at a time, no.
No.
If
I ask you now whether you think if the executive management and support staff of SAA are being security vetted, the board members should also be security vetted, what would your answer be?
My answer would be yes, the board would have to be vetted. But remember, Advocate of Mayor, the board is vetted in terms of their contract. Do their contract cater for that? Or if it's a request from the president?
Sorry, just explain that to me.
According to the MIS.
What is MIS?
It's a minimum information security standard.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Chapter 5, we vet the board if there is a request to vet them.
But I thought your understanding of the Act was that anyone employed by an organ of state should be vetted.
Yes.
So why aren't...
Or rendering a service.
Or rendering a service.
Yes.
But let's look at those who are...
Rendering a service if they are going to have access to classified information.
Yes.
And it seems that if executives are going to have access to classified information, definitely board members would also have access.
Yes.
So even if you don't say board members are employees, but they are people who are rendering a service and will have access
To classified
information if the executive managers also have access.
Yes. So they should be vetted on that note.
Yeah.
Yes.
So irrespective of what the other instrument is that you referred to, on the basis of your understanding of the Act, Section 2, capital letter A,
Yes.
they should have been vetted if their responsibilities require them to have access to classified information.
Yes, and considering the Section 2A. Yes.
Yeah, okay. Has that helped?
Indeed, Chair, I'm indebted.
Okay.
Did anyone raise this with the respective ministers at the time that you were rolling out your vetting operation in
No.
SAA?
No.
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 Do you think that ought to have been raised?
I didn't think about it at the time.
And as you sit here now today,
I'll have to think about it.
No, I'm sorry. What would we have to think about as you sit there today?
No, she's asking me if the ministers were engaged in terms of the board having to be vetted. I'm saying no one engaged with those ministers at that time.
Yes, no, I thought she asked you the question whether as you sit there now, you think the board members should also have been vetted. And I thought you had given an answer which was yes,
Yes.
as you sit here. But at that time,
At
you
that
didn't think
time.
about it.
No, at that time I didn't think about
Okay,
it.
but the answer you gave her was not the same. Ms. Hofmeyer, did I
Indeed.
misunderstand something?
No, not at all.
Yeah, okay.
So we've clarified now, as I understand it, just to be clear on your evidence, Ms. Dlamini, is as you sit here today, you think the members of the SAA board should also have been security vetted?
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to return to your affidavit at page 7. And at page 7, you pick up at paragraph 3.3, the fact that you were appointed project manager.
Maybe just for the sake of completeness, and I think we have both touched on this. Would you know or would you not know whether executive managers of SAA would have access to classified information? Is that something you would know, or is that something you would not know?
No, I wouldn't know. I wouldn't know,
Yes,
Chairperson. I
yes.
wouldn't know. Yeah.
But are you able to say, well, if executive managers of SAA were going to have access to classified information, then the board would also have access to classified information?
Of
Is that
course.
something you are able to say in
Of
terms
course.
of your
yes.
yes,
It
it's
would just
logical.
make sense. Yes.
Yes, okay.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I do actually have a follow-up question from that before we go to
Yes.
MISS, which is
Yes.
MISS. In the course of your vetting operation, did you at any point assess whether the executive managers and support staff that you were vetting had access to classified information?
No, we didn't.
Let's go to, you mentioned MISS, that's the Minimum Information Security Standards document. It has been included in the legislation bundle that we were just looking at, and you referenced Chapter 5 of that document. You'll find that at page 465 of the legislation bundle. Do you have it in front of you?
465.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, I do.
I think you were referring to clause 1.5 on that page. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So let's see what that clause says. It says political appointees, directors, generals, ambassadors, etc., will not be vetted unless the president so requests or the relevant contract so provides. Then goes on and says, from the lowest level up to Deputy Director General, all staff members and any other individuals who should have access to classified information must be subjected to security vetting. Do you see that?
Yes.
So following on from the Chair's questions earlier, do you accept that if it was established that the members of the board of SAA had access to classified information, they would be required to be subjected to security vetting?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But they are not among the political appointees who won't be vetted unless required by the president or their contract provides, are they?
Political. They are not full members who are employed by SAA.
No, what I'm asking is, are they political appointees?
No, they are not.
No. So that first sentence couldn't apply to them. What does apply to them is the second sentence,
Yes.
which is irrespective of your level, if you have access to classified information, you must be
You
vetted.
must be
Is that
vetted.
correct?
That's correct, yes.
So the conduct of this vetting operation was not compliant with MISS when it was conducted at SAA, was it?
It was because the executives who were vetted are employees of SAA.
No, what I'm interested in is this paragraph of MISS to which you drew our attention says that irrespective of the level you are at, if you are a person who has access to classified information, you must be subject to security vetting. Do you see that?
I see that.
We've already confirmed that the board members of SAA would have had that access if anyone had it.
Yes.
Yes, and what I say following on from that is they weren't vetted in your security vetting operation at SAA, were they?
No, they were not.
So that vetting operation did not comply with this paragraph of MISS, did it?
No, it was not on this. It was on section 2A.
Thank you. Ms. Dlamini, Chair, I see we're at 1:15. I'm going to move to a new topic, so it may be convenient to take the break.
Yes, no, that's fine. We'll adjourn for tea and resume at past. We adjourn.
All rise.
Okay, let's continue.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Dlamini, we were before the break at page 7 of your affidavit, and I'd indicated that at paragraph 3.3, you record there that you were appointed as the project manager of the vetting process. You've already given evidence this morning to that effect. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Advocate of Mayor.
And you say at paragraph 3.4 that you designed a project plan. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct.
I'd like to go to that project plan because you attach it as an annexure to your affidavit. Let's just go to the first page to start with. That's at page 30 of Exhibit DD 24.
Did you say page 20?
30, Chair.
30.
30.
Okay.
Can you confirm, Ms. Dlamini, that the document that appears at page 30 and runs to page 42 of Exhibit DD 24 is the project plan that you compiled?
Yes, Advocate of Mayor, it is the project plan that I designed.
I'd like to pick it up then at page 34, 34. At page 34, you have a heading there against paragraph number 1.3, which reads project goals and objectives. Do you see that?
Yes.
Could you please read into the record what you recorded in this project plan were the project goals and objectives?
The main goal of the project is for SSA to support the government of RSA in securing its sovereignty and protecting its integrity through conducting vetting to all executive management and support staff at SAA in a prescribed manner as mandated by the National Intelligence Act as amended by Section 3 of the General Intelligence Amendment Act 11.
And the next sentence?
The objective is to ensure that all classified and sensitive documents within SSA are accessed by personnel with valid security clearances.
Well, can I ask, first of all, it seems to me that that is an error in that sentence to refer to SSA. Should that not be a reference to SAA?
Yes, that's an error.
It's an error we've made numerous times in our investigations because we confuse the A and the S. But is it correct that what you meant to record here is the objective is to ensure that all classified and sensitive documents within SAA are accessed by personnel with valid security clearances? Is that correct?
That's correct.
How are you going to do that if you had not established at all in this vetting operation whether anyone at SAA actually had access to classified information?
Vetting in an ideal situation will be conducted prior to employment, so that when you have access to classified information, you've already gone through the background screening.
Now, I understand that as an ideal.
Yes.
What I'm asking is, how could it have been an objective of this vetting exercise that was going to be conducted in respect of existing employees to ensure that they only had access to classified and sensitive documents if they had valid security clearances, in a situation where no one at any point in this vetting operation actually found out whether anyone at SAA did have access to classified information?
Our role was to identify the risk posed by the executives who are already employed at that entity, and then advise the client, the entity, accordingly.
Well, what Mr. Hofmeyer is putting to you, or is asking you, Ms. Dlamini, is actually fundamental to this project that you were heading. This sentence says, the objective of this project, of this vetting, is to ensure that classified and sensitive documents within SAA are accessed by personnel with valid security clearances. Now, she is saying to you, the starting point, shouldn't the starting point have been the people that you are required to vet, do they have access to classified and sensitive information or documents in terms of their jobs? Because if you don't ask that question first before doing the project, you may be wasting everybody's time and money vetting people who won't have access to classified information and sensitive documents. You understand the question?
I get the question, Chairperson, but remember we started by saying officials who are employed by an organ of state need to undergo vetting as per Section 2A of the law, right? Now, those persons, if they have access to classified information as Part B now of Section 2A, they have to be vetted. So, if you are employed by an organ of state, you have to be vetted.
But that's not the question. The question relates to the objective of this project.
Yes.
The objective of this project was not to make sure that everybody employed at SAA was security vetted. That's not the objective that is stated here. What is stated here is that the reason why you were having this project was to make sure that people who had access to sensitive information would be people who would have valid security clearances. And the question is, how do you undertake a project which has such an objective if you don't know that the people that you are going to spend time on vetting are people who do have access to such information?
Yes, we did not access the job descriptions of the executives that I can say prior to vetting, but the approach was to say at a strategic level, as executives, they have to be vetted.
You want to take it from there, Ms.
Yes.
Hofmeyer?
Yes.
Ms. Dlamini,
Yes.
your evidence has been clear at the level of fact.
Yes.
At no stage in this vetting operation did you or your team establish whether these executives or their support staff had access. Is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Ms. Dlamini, I'm going to show you in due course that that is a legal requirement for any lawful vetting to be conducted at any state-owned enterprise. I'm going to tell you that now, and I will take you there later. But I'm not concerned with that for the moment. What I'm concerned with for the moment is your own project plan. And your own project plan says the reason why we are doing this is because we want to establish and find people through a security vetting process who have the requisite clearance to access a type of information that we did not take any steps to establish whether they were accessing at any point.
Okay, let me come in there. In the reason that I've given to say the officials who are employed by a state-owned entity need to undergo a vetting assessment. In this case, we are talking about executives that are already employed. So we need to minimize the risk now to say these officials are already employed.
But you may
Yes.
not need to vet them. That's the other option available to you, isn't it?
Why?
Because if you don't establish whether they have access to the very information that you say they need security clearance for, maybe then you shouldn't vet them at all.
We would vet them because they are employed by a state entity.
We'll come to that in due course.
Yes.
Yes, you see, Ms. Dlamini, if the objective of the project was to vet everybody at SAA who was employed there, then it would be open to you to say, well, we didn't have to check whether the people we were vetting had access to classified information because we were simply vetting everybody who was employed there. Okay? But that's not what the objective says, as I understand it. It seems to say we're vetting people so that when they have access to classified information, sensitive information, they would be having valid security clearances. And the whole question that Ms. Hoffman was asking and I was coming in on is one would have expected that if that was the objective, one would expect that you would seek first to establish who has, in the course of their responsibilities, in the course of their duties, who has access to classified information and sensitive information, sensitive documents. Give us those people. Those are the ones that we are going to deal with.
Yes. Chairperson, if I may elaborate to say, flowing from the Section 2A of the law, considering that these officials were already employed by a state-owned entity, that would be a big consideration for them to be vetted.
No, Ms. Dlamini, I don't want us to waste time on this. We have dealt with that.
Yes.
And you have agreed that that's not the basis on which this project was done. The basis on which this project was done is stated in the objective.
Yes.
And that doesn't talk about everybody who is employed. It talks about somebody who may have access to classified and sensitive documents. You might be able to answer, you might not be able to answer, but one would have expected that if that was the objective, you would say to SAA or whoever, we don't want to waste time vetting people whose jobs don't require them to have access to sensitive information. We don't want to waste time vetting people who really have nothing to do with, who don't come close to sensitive or classified information. Give us the ones whose responsibilities put them in a position where they could have access.
Chairperson, if we were to refer to the letters between the two ministers, it states that these officials have access to sensitive information. Maybe the question would be, did the two ministers who engaged or communicated prior to the project being implemented, what exactly did they do to ensure that these people have access to sensitive information?
Where does it say that in the letter? Or which letter is it? The first one that was by Minister Mahlobo.
Yes.
I think it's page 17, Chair.
Yes.
It's page 17, where it says, you just refer. Okay, even if you can go to 19.
Well, let's start with 17.
17.
On paragraph 2, I just see where it says given sensitive information received on an ongoing basis.
Yes.
Now, I don't know whether you know, I don't know who is supposed to receive that sensitive information that he's talking about, whether he's talking about the state security agency receiving sensitive information about SAA, or whether he's talking about anybody else.
Yes.
Do you know? I don't know.
I don't know.
Okay. All right.
Yes.
So is there anything else in that letter that you think supports your not checking whether they had access to?
I'm just driving, Chairperson, the point that in the two ministers
Yeah,
who engaged prior
yeah,
to the project being implemented.
yes,
It is stated on these letters
yeah,
to
well,
say these executives have access to sensitive information.
yeah,
on
I'm
an
saying let's start
ongoing
on
basis.
let's start on the letter dated or on appearing on page 17.
Yes.
Is there anything that you rely on there to say these ministers, that these executives have access to sensitive information?
Let me read paragraph 2.
Yeah,
It has come to the attention of the State Security Agency that there is an urgent need for vetting and revetting of the state-owned enterprises, given sensitive information received on an ongoing basis. Now, the question that Advocate Hofmeyr is posing in terms of access to sensitive information, I'm saying I was not privy of what the two ministers communicated on, and if there was any reason or information shared relating to that access of sensitive information.
yes, you see,
Yes.
it's not going to help if we are going to look at these letters if you don't know whether the letters help you answer the question.
Yes,
If you know that they contain something that helps you answer the question, then it's fine. But
Yes.
if you don't know, then there's no point in looking at them.
yes.
Do you know whether they provide an answer for you?
Yes, to an extent that the two ministers might have engaged with SAA to obtain, to have the reasons as to do these executives have access to
Yeah, but that is
classified
speculation, is that right?
Yes.
You are speculating.
Yes.
But
So
other
it
than
is flown from that context.
Yes,
That's what
but-
I'm trying to explain.
But other than speculation, you are not able to point to anything to say it shows that it supports the decision to vet people without checking whether they had access to sensitive information. Is that right?
Yes, Chairperson, but I would go with paragraph 2 to support that.
Okay, but
Yes.
remember, paragraph 2, you agreed with me earlier on that where it refers to sensitive information, we don't know who they are talking about, the minister is talking about, whether he's talking about information, sensitive information received by the State Security Agency about SAA,
About SAA.
or whether it's, we don't know who received the information that he's talking about. Okay,
Yes.
all right,
Thank you, Chair.
yes. So, if you feel that you haven't, you wanted to check something before we leave this point, you may have a look. But
Yes, I do.
otherwise, if there is nothing else, Ms. Hofmeyr can move on.
Yes, I quickly want to check something. Oh, yes, I think the letter dated 2015, November 26.
Chair, it's page 19.
Page 19.
Yes,
From former Minister Nene.
yes,
I think the issue of sensitive information on an ongoing basis comes up again.
sorry?
The issue of sensitive information received on an ongoing basis is coming up again.
But all he's doing is just referring to what Minister Mahlobo had said
Has
in his
just said,
letter.
yes.
He's not saying anything of his own.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, Ms. Hofmeyr.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to then go back to your project plan.
Yes.
We were looking at, first of all, the objectives that you identified. That was at page 34. I'd like to go to page 35, if we may. That is of Exhibit DD 24.
Yes.
Now you'll see there's a heading there against the number 1.5. Do you see that? Reading critical success factors.
Where are you now?
We're at page 35.
Oh, 35. Yes.
And this is still in the project plan that you devised, and
Yes.
I was drawing your attention to the heading against item 1.5, which reads critical success factors. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And you've recorded there, the following are critical factors limited to this project. And then the first bullet is management buy-in and support. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Did you have a sense at the time that you were conducting this vetting exercise what the level of management buy-in and support was?
Yes.
Were you satisfied with it?
Yes, yes. Yes.
You didn't have a need at some point to go and meet with Ms. Mieni down in Cape Town to say you weren't receiving adequate support?
You mean, can you just elaborate again?
I asked you whether you were satisfied with the levels of management buy-in and support for the vetting exercise, and I understood your answer to be yes, you were satisfied.
Yes.
And then I said, I'm relying on what you said in your affidavit. I thought you said that there was a point that you had to go and meet Ms. Mieni down in Cape Town because you were concerned about the level of support and buy-in you were receiving.
Okay, let me explain on that. In terms of the buy-in and the support, remember we had briefed the board when we rolled out the project, but that didn't mean that any issues arising from the time that we briefed them, I cannot raise them. And that didn't mean that I don't have their buy-in.
So are you satisfied that you did get their buy-in in the course of the vetting
In
operation?
a sense, because they were briefed, everybody was briefed, and there were I didn't get any indication to say they don't support what we have to do.
So when the 7 executive managers resigned because of the vetting process, was that not an indication that you didn't have their support?
No, it wasn't.
What did that indicate?
Remember, the executives who resigned would write their letters to the employer, not to me. It could be of different reasons, but I had to engage on that to say, could it be anything relating to the work that we are doing there? So in terms of the support, the board, the acting CEO at the time, there was never any indication to say they are not on board.
No, I fully understand the board being on board because
Yes.
they were not being vetted. What I'm concerned about is the 118 managers and support staff whom you vetted.
Yes.
In a situation where 7 of those executive managers resigned during the course of this vetting operation, and we've heard evidence before this commission previously that there was great unhappiness amongst the executive managers about the fact that they were being subjected to security vetting in jobs that they had never been forewarned would have this requirement, and in circumstances where they had to give deeply personal information over to the state security agency. Were those not matters that came to your attention?
Advocate Mayor, you'll recall that I would arrange the meetings so that we engage on any of the issues arising at that particular time. And at no stage did any of the board members, any of the executive indicated to me or to the organization that I represent to say they are unhappy or they are not going, there are any issues that need to be discussed. I would be the one to engage them, to say, this is the situation, this is where we are, and provide status reporting in that regard. So in that sense, I would say I was of the idea that I still have the buy-in from them.
And can I just clarify who was at those meetings that you're talking about? You mentioned the board,
Yes.
and you mentioned some members of the executive. Previously, you'd indicated the acting CEO. Is
Yes.
that correct?
That's correct.
Or was the interim, I think her position at the time was also acting CFO in those meetings?
Yes.
Ms. Nancy. Was she also in these meetings where you were receiving feedback?
No.
No. So are we just talking about the board and the acting CEO?
Yes, and I have to indicate that I was stationed at Airways Park the whole time. So I would engage the CEO at any given point.
Yes.
So, advocate of mayor, at no stage did the former acting CEO indicated to me or to the organization to say there are issues or disturbing issues pertaining to the vetting of executives.
I understand that.
Yes, yes.
But you were reliant on him for the information about what the other executives were feeling. Is that correct?
I was prepared to brief them at any given stage.
No, I'm asking about who you were relying on to tell you whether there were other managers who were uncomfortable, unhappy, or dissatisfied about this vetting operation. What I understand you to say is your point of contact was the acting CEO,
Yes.
and it was with him, and that was Mr. Zwane at the time. Is that correct?
Was Mr. Zwane at the time.
Who
yes.
you were engaging. So you relied on him to give you this information, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd then like to just go to page 38 of your project plan. And pick it up there at item 2.3 on the page, which is dealing with major project milestones. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
Now, the fourth line within that table after the heading indicates that you gave a briefing to the chairperson of the SAA board and presented the project plan, and the date for that is the 13th of January 2016. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And then the next line item is that there was a briefing to the SAA board and presenting the project plan on the 14th of January 2016. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Why was there a need to brief the chairperson on the day before the briefing of the board?
I had requested the meeting to meet the chairperson of the board. And from my side, it was simply to observe protocol. If she was present at the board meeting the next day, I would have briefed her together with the board at the same time. So the very same project plan that was presented to her on the 13th was the very same project plan that was presented to the board in Midrand Protea Hotel on the 14th. So from my side, it was simply to observe protocol.
Just help me with that. Where did the meeting on the 13th of January 2016 take place with Ms. Mieni?
In Durban.
In Durban?
Yes.
So you travelled to Durban to meet with Ms. Mieni to give her the same briefing that would be given the following day to the board. Is that correct?
Let me indicate that the board sitting on the 14th, I wasn't aware that the board is sitting on the 14th. We got that information from the chairperson herself to say, look, the board is sitting tomorrow in Midrand. It will be easier for you to meet them there because she's in a position to know in terms of the schedule for the board. Yes.
Sorry, then we were cross purposes because when you designed the project plan, you included that meeting. Remember, we were at page 38?
Yes.
How could you have included this in the project plan if you didn't know about the meeting before?
I think the date, I just added the date after it had occurred.
So this was not a plan prepared in advance of the project?
It was, but I think that the date, those two dates, I just put them as we went along.
Oh, so it was revised after its initial?
Yes.
Okay, so let me get that right. You arrange a meeting with Ms. Mieni down in Durban?
Yes.
Because she's the chairperson of the board,
yes.
Right? Now, if we go back to your affidavit at page 8.
Before you do that,
Apologies,
Ms.
yeah.
Hofmeyer, Ms. Dlamini, it looks like that date on page 38, the first date, 8 December 2016, is wrong. Should it not be 2015?
No, it's correct. It's 2016. It's 2016.
But then you're talking about how can you start with 8 December 2016 and come to 11 January 2016?
Oh,
It must be a
you
2015.
You mean the second date?
No, the first, well, either the first date is wrong or the other dates are wrong.
I think the second date is wrong.
Ms. Dlamini, can I assist? I don't think the second date can be the wrong one. That's because you closed the project
Yes.
on the 30th of July 2016. So you
Yes.
couldn't have had your stakeholder engagement after you closed the project.
Yes.
Isn't the error that it should be 8 December 2015?
2015, yes.
Yes.
You are correct. It's 2015.
And so despite the fact that you presented this project plan, just following on from the chair's question, on the 11th of January 2016, your evidence has been this actual document was revised subsequently, and that's how we get the insertion of the 14th of January. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So let me just get it right. You were planning then only to meet with Ms. Mieni on the
Yes.
13th of
Yes.
January. Is
Yes.
that right?
Yes. Yes.
And you met with her in Durban, and when you met in Durban, she then indicated, oh, there's a board meeting tomorrow in Midrand, so maybe you should attend that. Is that how it unfolded?
Yes, that's how it unfolded.
Okay, so then I'd like to go back to what you said in your affidavit was discussed at that meeting with Ms. Mieni. You'll find that at page 8 of Exhibit DD 24.
Page 8. Yes.
So at page 8, paragraph 3.5, you indicate that you had this meeting on the 13th of January, and you indicate halfway down that paragraph what the purpose of the meeting was.
Yes.
Just tell us what the purpose was.
The purpose of the meeting was to present the project plan and how it's going to be rolled out, and also to request it to make available the necessary resources such as parking, access card, polygraph suite, nodal point offices, and an operational center.
Is that not something that you'd have to get the board, or at least the executive members of the board, to assist with? How could Ms. Mieni facilitate all of this on her own?
I was of the idea that whatever we've discussed with her and the board together, they will be able to attend to it and get to us.
No, indeed, if you discuss it with them together. But I understand your evidence to be you had intended only to meet with Ms. Mieni on the 13th.
Yes.
It was only in the course of that meeting that you were told about the board meeting the
board
next
sitting.
day. So you went to her on the 13th to discuss aspects with her that she could not herself have executed. Is that right?
Yes.
Thank you. So there would, of course, have been a need, notwithstanding that meeting, to meet with the board. Correct?
Of course, but I wasn't aware when is the board meeting.
Right.
Yes.
I understand that.
Yes.
Let's then go to the stages of the vetting process. And you pick that up at page 9 of your affidavit. Sorry, just before I go there, I did want to clarify one thing. Was Ms. Mieni at the meeting on the 14th?
No, she wasn't.
Okay. So you saw her on the 13th, and then the board excluding her you saw on the 14th. Is that right?
We met the board. The board was down in Midrand on the
Right.
14th, yes.
Okay. So you describe from paragraph 3.8 that there are various stages of a vetting project or operation. Can you please take us through those 3 stages?
Okay,
4. Apologies, 4. There are 4 stages.
yes, there are 4 stages that we follow in terms of the vetting exercise. That is the administration stage, the vetting fieldwork stage, polygraph examination, and the analysis stage, which is the last part where the information is interpreted, analyzed, and a recommendation is done. Okay. Let me start with the administration stage. The administration stage is where an official will fill in a vetting form, Z204 form, attach the required documentation, and we will load that in our system and verify it, right? Basically, that's it in terms of the administration. And then the vetting fieldwork stage. Now, the file from the administration unit will move to the vetting unit. That's where now the vetting officer who has been assigned that particular case would make the necessary arrangement to conduct interviews with the references that have been identified from the form and additional ones that she would go on to recruit, if I may use that word. And then at this stage, the vetting officer would, after making those arrangements, would go on the field to conduct the interviews, and then he or she will combine a report, and that report will be moved to the polygraph examiner. Now that stage is polygraph examination. And let me also indicate that there are guiding questions that the vetting officer uses or follows when they conduct those interviews. But he or she can add any questions being guided by the person that he or she is vetting, because each individual's vetting is different from another. So the information would be different. So the vetting officer must probe further. So those questions can be changed, or there can be additional questions by the vetting officer. Now the polygraph stage, which is the third stage now. That's where the polygraph examination will take place. Are you following me?
I am.
Yes. It is conducted to...
Can I just say it's most important that the chair follows, not me. So,
okay.
if I can just...
Okay. At this stage now, the polygraph is to determine the reliability of information. So he or she conducts vetting of that particular official, compile a report. He or she can refer the file back to the vetting officer, or the file can move to the next stage, the analysis. And then the last stage is the analysis part, where the information is consolidated, interpreted, analyzed from the administration stage to the vetting stage to the polygraph stage. So this is the analyst now who's consolidating and interpreting all that information to make the final conclusions.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'd like to pick up on a few aspects of each of the stages.
Yes.
Now, in the first stage, there's a form that has to be completed by the person being vetted, and there is certain documentary information that has to be provided. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That information that has to be provided is quite extensive, isn't it?
Quite extensive, yes, it is.
Yes. We have an affidavit in your file from Ms. Olitsky. Ms. Olitsky was chair, the person who Ms. Nancy testified. She had had a conversation with Ms. Mieni about. The evidence previously was that when Ms. Mieni received feedback on Ms. Olitsky's security vetting, it was drawn to her attention that she had dual citizenship. And Ms. Mieni engaged Ms. Nancy to take steps to have Ms. Olitsky removed, and wanted to use, according to Ms. Nancy's evidence, the fact of her dual citizenship as a basis for removal. So we've obtained an affidavit from Ms. Olitsky, who despite all of this still is employed by SAA. And she has given us some indications of how much information needs to be provided in order to complete these forms. And you'll find that at page 70 of Exhibit DD24. Yes, 70. Just for the record,
70.
the affidavit commences at page 68 of Exhibit DD24. It is an affidavit by Lindsay Sharon Olitsky. I'll spell Olitsky, Olitzki. And where I want to pick it up is at page 70, because there at paragraph 12, Ms. Olitsky indicates the type of information she had to supply in order to complete the form. At paragraph 12, she says there, the form required a significant amount of information re personal particulars, education, health, including questions re psychiatric treatment, alcohol and drug abuse, and previous marriage or cohabiting arrangements. In addition, this is at paragraph 13, details of family members, relatives was required, including details relating to the country of birth and nationality. Names and contact details of person who had known you for 5 to 20 years was also requested, plus a full employment history as well as all visits outside the country. SAA member plus spouse for the past 5 years. Also copy of passport pages. Paragraph 14, additional information required was a 3-month history of bank accounts, credit card accounts, vehicle and home loans, plus a monthly income and expenditure budget, and details of property owned and other sources of income. Ms. Dlamini, I did have your evidence earlier to be you accept that this is a substantial amount of information that needs to be handed over. Is that correct?
Yes, yes.
And it includes personal and private information of persons, correct?
Financials, yes.
Personal and private,
Yes.
correct?
Yes.
So that's the first stage. They have to hand over all of this information. And then they get to an interview, is that correct? That's the next stage.
That's the next stage, yes.
Right. And you've indicated to us that there are some guideline questions that must be covered in that interview, is that correct?
That's correct.
And you provided us as an annexure to your affidavit with some of those questions.
Yes.
I understand your evidence to be that they're guidelines, they can be departed from, is that right?
Yes.
Is it fair to say that they provide the base from which questions are asked?
They provide the base from which the questions are asked.
Yes. And then, depending on answers, you might want to probe further or
yes.
ask additional questions. Is that right?
Exactly.
I'd like to go to the type of questions that are asked of people subjected to security vetting. And you'll find that from page 43 of your exhibit DD24. Page 43, do you have that?
Yes, yes. I'm on page 43, yes.
So, Ms. Dlamini, I'm just going to highlight some of the questions. This is a fairly detailed document comprising, I think, 7 pages. But what I want to highlight in the course of this and have your comment on afterwards is that not only is all that documentary information required to be provided to the State Security Agency, but when you arrive for your interview, you're going to be asked a series of questions that engage deeply private and personal matters. And I'd like to highlight the questions for you that I say are of that quality. Okay, so on page 43, you get asked a whole lot about your family background and upbringing, and amongst the questions midway down that page is whether all the children in the family were treated fairly while growing up. Do you see that?
Yes.
It's sort of in the middle of the page. Were all the children treated fairly while growing up?
Oh, yes.
Do you
yes,
see that?
I see that.
Do you accept that that's quite a personal question?
Yes, yes, I do.
And further down, about 2/3 of the way down, You also get asked, were any of your parents or brothers or sisters abusing alcohol, drugs or substances? And if the answer is yes, you have to tell the vetting officer what that was. Do you agree that that's quite personal?
Yes, because the interview is quite personal. Yes, it's quite personal. So
It is.
I would say the entire questioning is quite personal.
Yes.
Yes.
Let's look at some of the other items. You get asked the question after that, did any of your immediate family receive counseling or psychotherapy? And if they did, you have to tell this member of the State Security Agency about the psychological treatment that one of the members of your family received. Is that right?
From the questions that you have, the questions is like, yes, it's asking that. Yeah. but
You
we
then
can
get
do-
asked at the bottom of that page to describe your spouse's personality. Do you see that?
Yes, yes.
And that also is a personal matter,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yes.
And then over the page at page 44,
Yes.
you get asked as the fourth question on this page, if you had your life over again, would you marry your spouse?
Yes.
Yes, you accept that is a fundamentally personal question, a question the answer to which you probably would not have ever communicated to your spouse.
As I've said, I think
Depending
the-
on what the answer is.
Correct. I'm anticipating when you don't want to answer the question. So true. Deeply personal.
Yes,
Yes.
advocate of mayor, as I've said, I think the entire
Yes.
interview is personal.
Of course, but
I know
this-
you want to pick
we
up
do.
certain questions.
Indeed, because
Yes,
this was
from
an
the interviews.
operation
Yes.
that was conducted at SAA,
Yes.
in which 118 people were asked these questions. Right, but further of the way down, what kind of relationship was there between your parents? Again, that's personal, isn't it?
All the questions are personal. I still
In the
maintain.
middle of the page, what kind of influence do relationships have on the marriage? They're talking there about how you relate to your parents-in-law. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
And then you're asked, do you believe in having more than one partner at a time? And you're
That's
asked to
right,
explain your answer, correct?
Yes, yes.
Again, deeply personal. And you even asked if you have lost your spouse, at the bottom of the page, how your children coped with the death of your spouse. Do you see that?
Yes.
Are these people given any counseling before or after they answer these questions in
No.
a vetting operation?
No, they're
No.
not.
But they know it's going to be followed by a polygraph test, don't they?
Yes.
So they daren't answer any of these questions falsely, dare they?
I wouldn't say that exactly, but you would get the answers, the responses, depending on what the person
Well, if
is
they
saying.
want to succeed and get their security clearance, they better give truthful answers to these questions. Is that not correct?
I believe so.
Yes. Let's go to page 45. You asked all about your employment behavior, and then 2/3 of the way down, you asked about how you deal with stress and pressure. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
That's also personal, is that right?
Yes, Advocate Mayor.
Thank
the
you.
entire interview is personal.
Okay, let me read the final questions because I think your answer is going to be the same, and then I'll just record them for the record and you'll tell me if you accept that they're all personal. At page 46, you're asked about whether you're social and whether you go to bars and clubs. You're asked when you attend parties or socials what you talk about. You're asked whether you hang out with men or with women. You're asked what you see as luxuries. You're asked whether you're the type of person to make impulsive decisions with regard to buying things. At page 47, you're asked about whether you borrow money on a regular basis from your friends or family and whether you pay it back on a regular basis. You're asked what stores you have accounts with and whether you are involved in any form of gambling, and if so, you must explain how often you do so. You're asked about whether you belong to a church, whether it guides you in your life, what principles you live by. You're asked about whether you belong to a religion. You're asked about whether you're a member of a political organization and whether the organization is what you believe in. You're asked about whether you think it's wrong to change your beliefs on a regular basis and to give the reasons for that. At page 48, you're asked about what you feel about the government of the day and whether you're happy with the current situation in our land. You're asked what your role is in political organizations and how you attend to that role. You're asked how you feel about the existence of radical organizations. And then you're asked about your personality. You're asked about whether you're predictable, what you do when you're angry, how you deal with it, and what you do after an argument. And on the last page, page 49, you're asked that if the person questioning you were your friend, they say, could they trust you with their secrets? You're asked what you think about manipulation. You're asked whether you're bribable, and you asked what you will do if you're ever bribed or blackmailed. Ms. Dlamini, I have not read all the questions. I've read the ones which, when I went through this, I thought highlighted the extremely invasive nature of these questions and the extent of your personal life that you have to disclose when you are subjected to security vetting. Do you accept that all of these questions are of that nature?
Just like I've said, Advocate of Mayor, the entire interview, it's a personal interview.
Indeed.
Yes.
Indeed.
Because the answer is yes.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Right. Let us then return, if we may, to the polygraph stage, because as I understand it, we're now at stage 3. You've been asked all of those questions in the interview stage, and now you're going to proceed to the polygraph stage. And that is at page 10 of your affidavit in Exhibit DD 24. Now, Ms. Dlamini, what you say here at paragraph 3.8.3 is that, and I'm just going to read, if I may, the first 2 sentences. During this stage, the official will be subjected to a polygraph in order to determine the reliability of the information gathered during the investigation. It is mainly conducted in respect of top secret clearances. However, in certain instances, it may be used in other levels of clearances, where the investigations require the determination of the reliability of the information gathered after the interview. Gathered, and then it's a new sentence. After the interview, the officer writes a report. Okay, what I'm interested in is how was the decision taken in respect of the SAA officials, whether to subject them to polygraph tests?
Because they were vetted at a top secret level.
So how did you decide to vet them at a top secret level?
It's standard practice for senior management to be vetted at a top secret clearance.
But don't you have to know whether they're ever going to be in receipt of top secret information?
Because the request stated that they are executives. So they are vetted at a top secret level.
So let me just understand that. Just because the people you were vetting were executives of a state-owned company, is there an automatic application then that they must receive top secret clearance?
Yes.
Right. And at no point prior to this does anyone ever find out whether they're actually ever going to get top secret information. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And their support staff? Why do they get polygraphed?
I noted that from the forms or the submissions that we got, it was mainly the executives that submitted.
No, I think the question is different. I understand that this operation at SAA involved interviews and then polygraphs of all the people interviewed. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Amongst the people interviewed were numerous support staff. Why were they polygraphed?
As I'm saying, Advocate of Mayor, from the submissions that we received, it was the executives that submitted back the forms and the supporting documents.
So I'm
Now,
not sure.
the question is, did you not subject staff who were not executive managers to a polygraph test?
No,
You did not?
No.
Did you
No.
was it only the executive
it
managers
was
that
only
you
the
subjected to a
executive
polygraph
managers,
test?
Yes.
Okay.
The Commission engaged with the State Security Agency before this evidence about the reports that had been generated.
Yes.
And those reports were not provided. But part of what was requested was that in your affidavit you would have had a look at those reports and you would give us an indication insofar as the polygraph questions were concerned, what the standard polygraph questions were that emerged from those reports. Do you remember that request?
Yes, I remember that request.
I didn't find that in your affidavit. Can you help us today with the answer to that question?
What would be the question?
When you looked at the reports of the polygraphers,
Yes.
right, as you were requested to do, the Commission was interested to know what types of questions over and above those standard questions were being asked of those persons subjected to polygraphs.
Oh, yes.
Are you
yes.
able to assist us with that?
You are quite correct. I remember in the meeting that we had, you did indicate. I was hoping we would have the copy of the questions, just like you've gone through the vetting questionnaire. We're hoping to provide you with those questions and then indicate what were the additional questions. So I think that can be provided.
Okay.
Yes.
My understanding was it was going to be covered in the affidavit. Is it the case that you weren't able to do so at the time of providing the
I
affidavit?
think it was just a slip of the mind at
I
the time,
understand.
yes.
And as you sit here today, you haven't done that exercise, so
No,
you'll
I
need to
haven't.
go back.
Yes, yes.
I
can do
understand.
that, yeah.
Thank you. So I had misunderstood that, and I'm grateful for the clarification. So it was only executive managers, not their support staff, who were polygraphed. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
And I understand your evidence to be the reason for that is because as soon as you're in executive management in a state-owned company, you must be cleared for top secret. Is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And that is the default position, irrespective of whether any particular executive manager is ever actually going to see top secret information. Is that right?
Yes.
Does that strike you as odd, Ms. Dlamini?
Not at all.
Explain why.
Because I know when it comes to the issue of the levels of clearances, the security managers will indicate in terms of the request to state that these particular persons should be vetted at this level, right? But in this case, from the request that we received from the entity, it was not specified. So we just took the standard approach to say that they will be vetted at a top secret level.
You see, it's the top secret level that requires the polygraph, right?
Yes, yes.
Is top secret the highest level?
Yes.
Why would you apply the highest level and not the lowest level if you don't know what information they actually are accessing?
Let me come back to that.
I don't
Yes.
think that.
You're saying to me, yeah,
Do you understand the question?
I don't
I think
understand
you
the
do.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, she will repeat it.
Yes, can you repeat the
Yeah.
question?
What I asked is, if you don't know what types of information
Yes.
the executives have access to, why do you decide to clear them for the top security clearance and not the lowest security clearance?
Oh, now I get the question. And I've said, advocate of mayor at SMS level, we vet at the top secret clearance.
What is
Level.
SMS level?
Senior management, yes.
Because there's some rule somewhere.
There's no rule somewhere. At an SMS level, when we get the request, it is indicated that this person must be vetted at this level. But at this particular time, the request that came did not indicate what level should they be vetted at. But because it was stated that they have access to sensitive information, we vetted them at the top secretariat.
Well, we've already traversed that,
Yes.
Ms. Dlamini. It's not clear that it was ever stated.
Yeah, nobody ever said that. I
Yes.
thought you said you considered that.
I'm stating from the letters from the two ministers.
Yes, we dealt with that. You were
Yes.
not able to point out anything that says that.
Sensitive information.
Remember, I gave you time to say, where does it say there that the executives would receive sensitive information?
On the letter, Chairperson, it says, given the sensitive information they receive on an ongoing basis.
No.
Yes.
Ms. Dlamini, you can accept that it doesn't say that, and we looked at it. Both, I gave you chance to look, and I asked you, and you considered. Let's move on.
Let's move on.
Can I just ask, when the managers were briefed, were you involved in that briefing that happened in, I think it was January 2016?
No, I wasn't present.
Who conducted that briefing?
We've got a structure dedicated to doing that.
Do you know whether the executives were told that they could refuse the polygraph?
Yes.
Yes, you know that they were told that they could refuse
No,
it.
I was not present when the awareness presentations were conducted.
Did you find out afterwards what was communicated to managers about whether they could refuse the polygraph?
No, I didn't find out.
And did you come to have any sense of whether the managers who were subjected to the polygraph were told that they had to take the polygraph?
No.
Do you accept that they ought to have been told that they're entitled to refuse it?
I think the awareness presentations that were presented, we will have to establish in terms of the details.
Yes.
Yes.
That's a question about whether it happened.
Yes.
What I'm interested in is, do you accept that in accordance with the application of the proper vetting procedures, they should have been told that they're entitled to refuse the polygraph?
Yes, of course.
Yes.
Yes, of course.
Ms. Olitsky's affidavit says that they were told that they needed to do the polygraph. Do you have any basis to dispute what she says they were told?
I wouldn't tell.
So I think the answer is no.
I wouldn't tell.
Thank you. I'd then like to go to the evaluation stage. That's, you deal with at page 11.
Yes.
You say during this stage, this is at paragraph 3.8.4, all information contained, including the reports by the vetting and polygraph officers, are studied and interpreted in order to determine risks. And then moving on a bit thereafter, the evaluator will make recommendations whether or not clearance ought to be granted or declined. Do you see that?
Yes, I see that.
Are you aware that the vetting regulations say that an applicant must be notified in writing of the outcome of a vetting operation?
Yes.
Did you take steps to ensure all of the people who were vetted at SAA received that feedback in writing?
Yes, I did.
And what did you establish about that?
You mean the outcome?
Yes.
Yes. The outcome, yes, it was received by the acting CEO at the time. Mr. Zwan, yes.
So, sorry, so what did he say? Did he say to you that the outcomes had been communicated to the rest of the executive management and staff?
I didn't get that feedback from him, but from our side, it was received by them.
Sorry, I just need
By the
help.
acting CEO?
Yes.
Or by, you gave it to the acting CEO?
Yes,
You didn't
Chairperson,
send the
that's
information to the individual executive
No.
managers?
No.
Okay, so whether or not he passed it on, you don't know?
Whether or not he passed it on, I don't know.
Or would he be meant to pass it on?
He would be meant to pass it on.
And do you know whether the correspondence that was addressed to him with the outcome asked him to convey the outcome to the managers or not?
Yes.
It did ask him?
Yes.
Okay.
Could you provide that correspondence to us after today?
No, it was not in writing.
So this was a verbal communication?
This was a verbal communication.
Because the regulations require the agency to ensure that this information is given to the person who's been vetted. Is that not correct?
That is correct.
So am I to understand you that in performance of that duty, you tasked the acting CEO, Mr. Zwane, with the responsibility for communicating it?
Yes.
Would you be surprised to learn that at least 2 of the current SAA managers who were subjected to that vetting were not ever told the outcome?
Yes, I would be surprised.
And would you be concerned as well as surprised?
I would be surprised because there was never indication from our side to say or to approach us in terms of those outcomes. So I was of the idea that the applicants did receive the feedback.
Were you the one who asked Mr. Zwane verbally to inform the other executive managers of the outcome?
Yes, yes, I'm the
Did he
one.
undertake to do so?
Yes, yes.
Thank you. And then I would like to go to page 12 of your affidavit, if we may. At that paragraph, this is actually the point I was referring to earlier, Ms. Dlamini, about your meeting with Ms. Mieni, because you say at page 12, paragraph 3.10, during the process, we experienced challenges ranging from resignations by some executives, various inquiries by the officials from Mango Airlines on whether the scope of vetting had been extended to the executives of Mango, and the executives not being cooperative. All these challenges had the potential of tainting the integrity and prolonging the process. So it was there that I had picked up that I'd at least thought that during this vetting operation, it had been communicated to you that there were executives who were not happy about complying with the requirement of vetting. Did I misunderstand what you'd said here?
Remember, we had received the list, so I was able to track in terms of who has submitted and who has not submitted. So judging from that, I would tell how many numbers are still outstanding.
And did you take steps to find out the reasons why, in respect of those who were outstanding, they hadn't been submitted?
No, no.
But then you arranged an urgent meeting with Ms. Mieni, is that correct?
That is correct.
And why did you schedule that meeting?
To address the challenges that I've highlighted in 3.10, because as stated, they had a potential of tainting the integrity and prolonging the process.
And just tell me, how would they taint the integrity of the process if they didn't want to subject themselves to security vetting?
Because then it will mean the officials that were on the list, if they're not complying, it means we're not going to be able to reach our targets. We're not going to complete the work that we're supposed to do.
And what were those targets?
To ensure that the executives, as they refer to them, the top 100 are vetted.
The top 100 included support staff, is that right?
They call themselves the top 100.
Yes,
so
yes.
they use that.
But they would necessarily have to include support staff. I don't understand there to be 100 managers at SAA, or am I wrong?
I'm just referring to the term that
Yes.
they would use, yes.
Thank you.
But
and
you understood that term to include support staff, did you not?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did.
And what was Ms. Mieni's response when you raised these challenges with her?
On the issue of let me just go back. Remember, amongst the challenges, Yes, her indication would be they would try to assist in any way possible.
And do you know what steps were taken to assist?
No.
But you do say later in your affidavit there was a great improvement after that
Yes,
point.
judging from the submissions. Yes, but in terms of the actual steps, no, I wasn't.
You don't know?
No, I don't know.
I understand that. There was just the point about the questions that were asked Ms. Dlamini at the polygraph. I understand you say you haven't done the exercise to consider
Yes.
those reports. But as you sit here today, would you have any basis for disputing what Ms. Olitsky has indicated were the type of questions she was asked?
I would prefer not to engage on that particular case because I haven't had time to look at it. I don't know what happened on that particular date. So,
But at the time you compiled your presentation at the end of this vetting exercise,
Yes.
had you at that stage looked and seen the evaluation of the various reports that had been received from your vetting officers?
look, we're talking of more than 100 names that had to be vetted. So I think advocate of mayor to ask me on a particular case now.
No, I'm actually not
Yes.
interested in a particular case. What I'm interested in is we only had access to Ms. Olitsky and a Mr. Munsami, whose affidavit will be referred to later today. And they told us the type of questions they were asked. And Ms. Olitsky said she checked with 2 other of the managers who had been subjected to security vetting. It would have been much better for us, of course, if we got it from the agency. But what I'm saying to you is her evidence and that of her colleagues was that they were only asked 4 or 5 questions in the polygraph test. Is that customary to ask such a few number of questions?
Let me just say, maybe I pay attention to that because I'm not a professional polygrapher. So I think one would have to look what happened there. I think that's what I can say for now.
Maybe let's
Yes.
put the question like this. Do you conduct polygraph tests as part of your duties, or have you done that in the past?
No,
You don't.
I don't.
Do you know whether there are standard questions that are asked at a polygraph test?
Of course, yes, Chairperson. There are standard questions
Yes.
that are asked at the
Yes.
polygraph examination. Yes, there are.
Do you have an idea how many the standard questions are, more or less? 10, 20, 50, 200?
Let's look at about 7, 8.
Sorry?
Let's look at about 7, 8.
About 7, 8.
Yes.
7 or 8.
Yeah.
Though those would be the standard questions.
Those would be the standard, yes.
But the person conducting the test could ask additional questions.
Exactly, yes.
Would you know whether, in terms of asking additional questions, those conducting the test normally ask not more than a certain number of additional questions, or is that something you would not know?
No, I wouldn't know.
You wouldn't know.
But all I can say is each case is treated on merit,
On its own?
on its own.
Yes, but the standard questions, about
the
7 or
standard
8.
questions are there, Chairperson,
Yes.
as guiding as the
Yeah.
questions from vetting.
Yeah.
So the polygraph examiner concerned would treat that case on merit.
Okay, all right.
Yes.
Thank you, Chair. I'm indebted. Ms. Dlamini, after today, it would be useful for the Commission also to be provided with those standard polygraph questions.
Questions, yes.
Because as I understand, the ones you've given us are the guideline questions for the initial interview, correct?
I think those are the questions that we gave to you. Those are the questions I'm referring to.
Oh, because those are about more than 100 questions. So, and I understand your evidence to be at the polygraph stage, there are only 7 or 8. Is that right?
Standard ones,
Yes.
yes.
Yeah, standard ones.
Standard ones.
Yeah.
Yes.
But the person conducting the test is
Can
allowed
go
to
further.
ask more,
Yes.
but you don't know whether there is a limit as to how many.
No, there's
Yeah.
no limit.
Okay.
There's no limit.
I didn't find in those guideline questions any question related to whether the person had leaked confidential SAA information to other parties. Are you aware of that being a standard question?
I'm not aware.
I should have asked the question differently. Is that a standard question?
I don't know. I
Don't
don't
know.
know. I don't know.
I want to suggest to you it couldn't be because it's specific to SAA confidential information. So it couldn't be a standard question for
Look,
polygraphs, could
I'm
it?
trying to recall the questions now as you're asking me. So
Oh,
I don't
yeah.
want to say
No, that's-
that is standard, that is not.
Yeah.
Because
Well-
then you're going to say, I said it's standard
No,
and
no.
it doesn't come up. You see?
Ms. Dlamini, might I make this suggestion? We're very close to the lunch break.
Yes.
Maybe I could ask if you would, during the lunch break, just go over those guideline questions again.
Do we have them here?
You do, indeed. They're the ones that I understand you said were those that were attached from page 43. Is that correct?
40. Are you talking about the vetting questions
Yes.
or not the polygraph questions?
No, I thought that's what we just resolved. I understood these not to be the polygraph questions.
No,
Is that
these
right?
are not polygraph
Yes, so
questions.
that's why I said, could you please provide those to us after
Oh,
today?
yes. I thought you said the polygraph questions are here because I was going to go through.
No, we were at cross purposes. Thank you
Yes.
so much.
Yeah.
No, but then just over the lunch break, if you can reflect on it and whether the question of leaking SAA confidential information is a standard polygraph question, we would be indebted if you could assist us after the lunch break with that.
How? Can you give me more time?
No, I understand if you can't do it. I thought I'd
Yeah,
ask.
no,
I can't do it
if
now.
you say you would not be able to
Yes.
get the answer within an hour, within the lunch break, that's fine.
No,
I mean,
advocate of
She
mayor,
doesn't know what you have access to and what you don't have access to.
advocate of mayor, I am not in the position
Understood.
to obtain that information.
No,
now.
I understand.
Yes, but you can provide it later.
I
Yes.
can provide it later.
Just to
Yeah.
explain my urgency in relation to this, it was the matter that we asked be traversed in the affidavit today. And we don't have a great deal of time in this commission. And I understand your evidence to be it was overlooked, and I fully understand that. But if after today you could provide us with that information, we would be grateful.
Is it the kind of information you might be able to provide tomorrow
Yes.
in one way or another?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Chair, I indicated we're almost at the lunch break.
Yes.
But we have a lot of logistics for the next witness. Can I say, in respect of Ms. Dlamini, we would need to return a bit after lunch, but not for very long. I'm really in the concluding sections of
Yeah.
the questioning.
Yeah.
And we're fairly confident that we would complete the second witness still today. But there is the application for the second witness's evidence to be given in camera. My proposal was that we deal with it before the lunch adjournment so that logistics related to him could be dealt with over lunch. I'm just slightly concerned from a message I've given that we may not have the affidavit at
Yeah,
this point.
if they are ready, I can deal with it now.
Oh, we seem to have a version that hasn't yet been redacted. It's quite a process to redact. But for the purposes now, do we have a copy that... Chair, we have an unredacted copy, which if all we do is hand it up to you and it's moved unredacted, may not be a problem in order to facilitate it now. But if we do require the redacted copies, I just understand logistically that hasn't happened.
Well, wasn't there going to be one that would refer to him as Mr. Y?
I'm going to have to hand over to my learned
Yes,
friend
maybe
because it's their application. Thank you.
Let me hear what he has to say. Ms. Dlamini, you may leave the witness stand for now. He'll come back after lunch.
For now.
Yes, for now. Okay.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Yes.
Chair,
Yes.
what we had done was to prepare the application in Mr. Y's name, real
Yes.
name.
Yes.
But what we had sought in the notice of motion was that he be referred to as Y. So the application is in Mr. X's full name,
Mr. Wise.
Mr. Wise's full name, as Chairperson indicated earlier, that it should be brought in his name. But the court order, the order that we propose to hand up refers to him as Mr. Y.
Oh, no, what I meant was, I didn't want an application without any name, but I didn't mean that you have got to put in the application his real name. When I said Mr. Y, I meant that in the heading, it could say Mr. Y applicant. And then in the affidavit, what I was saying, he could say, I, the undersigned, Mr. Y, blah, 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 and then immediately explain that Mr. Y is not my true name.
Chairperson,
But for purposes of these proceedings, I ask for leave that I be referred to as Mr. Y,
Chair.
blah, blah, blah. That's the kind of thing I was talking about.
can I propose, given the logistical issues?
Yes, yeah.
We have, of course, in the notice of motion, sought that he be referred to as Mr. Y.
Yes.
And I believe that Chairperson's concerns can be dealt with by way of the redacted version, as it was the
Yes.
intention much earlier.
Yes.
But the affidavit, in a sense, it's in his full name.
Yeah.
That is the application, that is the affidavit that will not be made available to the public. But for the
Yes.
purpose of the order dealing with his with how his evidence would be dealt with, we have referred to him as Mr. Y, the applicant.
Yes.
So the concern where your Chairperson says it should refer as Mr. Y, we can simply just deal with that by way of the redacted version.
Well, what I can do, but the information in the affidavit that you have just handed up, is it the same as the information in the affidavit that you handed up
Yes.
in the morning?
Yes, but what we had done, because we had prepared a supplementary affidavit dealing, amongst others, the fact that Mr. Y understands that although his identity and details will be protected, that protection does not cover the version that is explained in his statement on which he will be laid. We just simply dealt with it, and we also added a request that he should just be referred to as Mr. Y for record purposes, although
Yes.
Mr. Y is not his full name.
Yes.
Yes.
Now, you would know that I dealt with an application which might be along the same lines 2 days ago. The order that you had put up in the morning seemed to be wider than the order that I granted 2 days ago. But I understand that you have been given a copy of the order that I made 2 days ago.
Yes.
Has the draft order that you have put up now, is it exactly the same as the other one or not?
No, is as we received it from the evidence leaders, which is in line with Mr. X's, with the one that the
Yes.
Chairperson made in relation to Mr. X.
Yes.
We have no objection to that being made.
Yes. So you essentially seek the same kind of order?
Yes, Mr. Chairperson,
Yes.
that would facilitate the resolution of this. It covers
Okay.
all our concerns, Chairperson.
Okay, just to be, if the affidavit that you have put up is essentially the same as the one that you had given me in the morning, if they are the same, I'm quite happy not to use the one that has got his name and use the one that doesn't have his name on the basis that it will be amended appropriately after I've dealt with the application.
That can be done, Chairperson.
can be
We'll
done.
just simply
Yes.
correct it later on and take out.
This back then to him. So basically, you will ensure that the applicant is Mr. Y, is reflected as Mr. Y.
We will do so, Chairperson.
But certainly now, the application can be taken to be brought by Mr. Y.
Yes, Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
And we would, if you're so inclined, we would move for the order as been
Yes.
proposed by the evidence leaders. It does
Yes.
cover all the,
Let me see, was the basis simply that was the basis for this kind of order arising from Mr. Y's employment?
Yes, Chairperson, and given his nature, the nature of his work within the agency.
Yes. Yeah.
I think that's covered at paragraph 3, Chairperson, of
Yes.
We have just handed up to
Yes. No. I remember. I think that the issue of notice, is it dealt with in the affidavit, notice to implicated persons? How is it dealt with?
Chair, we had left that to the evidence leaders, seeing that they would be the ones to notify, as the rules require, that they will notify anyone implicated. We do not address the issue of implicated persons, but we believe that should there be a need for the implicated persons who would like to cross-examine Mr. Y, they would follow the procedure outlined in the rules, and that logistical issues can be dealt with between them and the evidence leaders. But for the purposes of that, I think that
Yes.
can also be addressed by the Y application. Yes.
Okay, all right. Let me just check who will address the issue of notice with me.
Certainly, Chair.
Yes.
And may I just, before I do that, raise one point, because my learned friend doesn't know the precise terms of the
Yes.
order we gave in
Yes.
respect of Mr. X.
Yes.
The one addition, if I could just pass a copy. Chair, if you just look at the draft order that's been handed to you.
Yes.
I need the later one. The paragraph 2 on Mr. X's order only requested that his name not be disclosed. Right, but the request of this witness is that his name and other identifying features also not be disclosed. So I just wanted to draw to your attention.
The two I have on this draft order reads the witness name shall not be disclosed or published in any manner. That's the one, that's number 2.
You and I have the wrong version then, Chair.
Oh, that's the one that was just handed up now.
Let me just clarify.
And it's written Mr. Y
Yes.
as applicant.
I think the numerous versions today suggest you and I have got the wrong one.
Yes.
Could I just read into the record? We'll make sure that their copy is sufficient.
Yes. Is there not another copy from the...
Chair, there is
Yeah.
another copy,
Oh, okay.
but it refers to the State Security Agency as the applicant,
Oh.
but we've resolved that as I
Yeah.
understand it. If I can simply hand you up the correct wording for paragraph 2, but we will, after this, Chair, ensure that it correctly reflects the applicant as Mr. Y. Chair, this was the draft order that was handed to my learned friend this morning from the evidence leaders
Yes.
prior to your engagement about
Yes.
Mr. Y needing to be the applicant.
Yes.
And so all I'd like to draw your attention to is that paragraph 2 is broader than it was for Mr. X.
Yes.
You'll see there it's the witness's name, his position within the agency, and the nature of his duty should not be disclosed in his evidence. So I needed to draw your attention just to that discrepancy so that there was no misunderstanding as to its being a replica of Mr. X's order. But then on the question of notice, Chair,
So other than that part,
It
they
is
are
the
the same?
Indeed,
Okay,
Chair.
all right.
Then on the question of notice to implicated persons, the steps that were taken by the legal team on receipt of Mr. Y's main affidavit plus this application was to send Rule 33 notices to all persons implicated in the main affidavit, and all that we did in the notice was we continued to maintain the confidentiality about the witness's identity. And so rather than referring to him by name, we indicated in the notice that a witness who will make application to have his identity not disclosed will implicate you in the following respects. So that process has taken its course and it was done timeously.
Okay,
And I can tell you
okay.
that we've received no responses.
Okay, no, that's
Thank you.
fine. Then, unless counsel for Mr. Y has anything else, I'm quite happy to make the order here?
Chairperson, we would be happy as well.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. In respect of the application brought by Mr. Y, I grant the following order. 1. The witness is to be referred to during his evidence to the Commission and after his evidence insofar as the Commission is concerned as Mr. Y. That is 1. 2. The witness name, his position within the State Security Agency, and the nature of his duties shall not be disclosed or published in any manner. 3. No person may take or publish any photograph, image, or appearance of the witness, nor have his photograph or image or appearance published in any way, nor broadcast any video of the witness. 4. The witness need not be present at the Commission's hearing venue when giving his evidence, and may give his evidence from a secret location. 5. No person other than the chairperson, members of the Commission's legal team, the Commission's safety and security advisor, those necessary to assist the witness when he gives evidence, or another person specifically designated by the chairperson will be permitted to enter the secret location without the prior written permission of the chairperson. 6. An audio link from the secret location will be provided so that the witness evidence can be heard in the hearing room when he gives it. 7. This order may be amended or supplemented by the chairperson at any time if in his opinion that is necessary to ensure the non-disclosure of the witness' name and appearance or to ensure fairness to any implicated person. That is the order.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay. So you will make the necessary amendments on page 1 in terms of who the applicant is.
We'll do so, Chairperson.
Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are going to adjourn. I'm tempted to say maybe we should resume at 2:15.
I think that will be helpful, Chair.
Because of
Logistics.
logistics,
Indeed.
yes. We'll adjourn now, and we are going to resume at 2:15.
Thank you,
We
Chair.
adjourn.
All rise.